The eNASCAR Pro Invitational iRacing Series returns and put on probably its most realistic show to date. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric and welcome to Out of the Groove race review episode. Once again, it's been a couple weeks, but today we are reviewing the Richmond Raceway iRacing event from earlier this afternoon. The eNASCAR Pro Invitational Series is back after taking a week off for Easter, and after some weird format changes throughout the week, 30 drivers took to the virtual racetrack today on Fox and FS1 and put on a heck of a show. I'll just say it right off the bat. It was a pretty good show. It was, without a doubt, the most realistic looking NASCAR race this series has put on so far. We'll talk a little bit about some of the stuff that happened in the race, of course. We'll talk about the winner, and then of course at the end of this episode I will be putting this thing on my groovy gauge, talking about what I thought of the race as a whole. How entertaining was it? How realistic was it? We'll talk about all that as well in this episode. So let's dive right in. Let's talk about the top finishers and some of the top and most notable storylines from this race. So it is iRacing, and one of the beautiful things about this Invitational series on iRacing is that it's allowed certain drivers who, in a typical NASCAR Cup Series weekend, we don't talk about that much. Timmy Hills, Parker Kligerman doesn't even race in the Cup Series full-time right now, Landon Castle, some of those names we don't talk about usually, but in this iRacing series, they have become front page news, front of the pack news. So much like the other races in this series, today, once again, you saw a lot of those drivers running up front, but I will give the NASCAR Cup Series veterans some credit. Kyle Busch has become really good. I mean, he was a top 10 threat today. Eric Jones was a top 10 threat today. Brad Keselowski was a top 5 threat today. Dale Earnhardt Jr. has been consistently a top 5, top 10 driver every single one of these iRacing races. Denny Hamlin continues to look good. Obviously, William Byron is sort of bridging the gap. His background is in iRacing. He's logged millions of laps, probably thousands of races on iRacing, hundreds of wins, but he's also a competitive NASCAR Cup Series driver for Hendrick Motorsports, so he's kind of bridging the two gaps. He got the win earlier today, second win in a row. But like I said a minute ago, a lot of the typical Cup Series guys, the real-life NASCAR superstars, have started to catch up to the iRacing superstars. 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I mean, it was Timmy Hill, Garrett Smithley battling for the win. This week, Bobby Labonte won the qualifying race before the main event even started. Dale Jr. was up there. Ryan Preece led a large portion of this race early on. I do feel like the real-life stars are starting to catch up to the iRacing stars. They're not there yet. William Byron dominated this race. Once he got out front, nobody was touching him. Timmy Hill, Parker Kligerman both looked really fast. They were probably the second or third or fourth best drivers in the field as well. But that's all I'm saying. Brad Keselowski showed me stuff that I hadn't seen from Brad Keselowski. Even Daniel Suarez, late he was involved in a wreck, but he was running up in the top 12 for most of this race, and he did well in his qualifying race as well to get in the main show. Some of the typical Cup Series guys are starting to catch up, and I think that's good, especially for Fox. That's good for TV ratings. They want those big names to be running up front as well, so that's important for them, of course. But let's talk about this race specifically, because this race had a little bit of everything. This was a great all-around, not just an iRacing event, this was great for an iRacing event, but just as a NASCAR race. Again, I made this analogy a couple weeks ago. If I took my glasses off, and I'm pretty blind, this is what I look like. I'm blurring out the camera. That's about what it looks like right now without my glasses. So in other words, if I took my glasses off and watched this race today, it was real. It was a real race. There weren't that many cautions, weren't a whole lot of wrecks or spins, and a lot of the spins and wrecks that did happen looked pretty realistic. Like Alex Bowman getting loose off of turn 2 on a restart and collecting Ross Chastain. That looked like a legit wreck. I mean, that was real. Tempers flaring. Ryan Preece dominated the first portion of this race, but then his tires faded. He fell back through the field, ended up getting turned. It looked like it was partially his fault, partially DiBenedetto's fault. Hard to say who was really to blame, but Matt DiBenedetto was involved.
Let's see. Inside, 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 inside. Oh, yeah. There we go. Totally my fault. Yeah, I totally deserved to be wrecked back for that intentionally.
Later on, the two found each other again. Preece dumped DiBenedetto on purpose. DiBenedetto then tracked him down and wrecked Preece, very a la Jeff Gordon, Clint Boyer, Matt Kenseth, Joey Logano, very much just took him out. DiBenedetto actually ended up being parked as a result. So you had tempers flaring, and the best part of this was Clint Boyer up in the Fox booth, almost egging them on, trying to encourage further drama, further conflict. Clint Boyer is going to be a gem whenever he eventually hits the TV broadcast booth full time. He is perfect. But this race had it all. It had long green flag runs, had some short runs, had wrecks. What was really cool about this race is that iRacing, I feel like iRacing very much pushed for NASCAR and Fox to implement 0 resets, 0 fast repairs for this race. And therefore that, I believe, encouraged many of the drivers to race cleanly, race a bit less aggressively, or at least less carelessly than they have in recent weeks, where they knew they had 1 or 2 or however many resets available to them. Knowing that you only had the car that you started the race with to race with, definitely enforced and incentivized cleaner racing. And that's why I think today's race looked extremely realistic, because there was a lot more give than there was take. And in a normal NASCAR race where it's a marathon, where these cars are tough to drive, you typically see more give than take, at least for the first half or first 2/3 of the race. And that's exactly what we saw in this thing here today. The wrecks and drama kind of ramped up the later on in the races we got. That's exactly how it works in most NASCAR, most real NASCAR races. So credit to iRacing. I was worried at first that maybe this was a mistake, but nope, they knew what they were doing. They know their platform better than anyone else. 0 resets, I think, is the way to go. Probably every race from here on out. Talladega, I guess, is next week, and maybe that one's a special case because I don't really know what to expect from Talladega. I'm not familiar enough with the platform, and I'll bet most of these drivers aren't familiar with it either. That one may be a tough one, but I think most races going forward, if not all, should have 0 resets. I think that made a huge difference today in the way the drivers raced. But this race had it all. Even had tire strategy come into play late with William Byron on older tires trying to hold off Timmy Hill and Parker Kligerman and Denny Hamlin. Pretty crazy. Hill and Kligerman had 15 lap fresher tires than Byron at the end of this thing, and they really weren't chasing him down. Byron was basically matching them for lap times, lap after lap. William Byron is a bit overpowered in my opinion. It is very impressive to watch, and you can clearly see why William Byron was able to go from iRacing to Hendrick Motorsports pretty darn quickly, because he's just incredible at the service. I mean, he's insane at sim racing. A well-deserved win for William Byron. He was running a black and gold Exalta scheme. Credit to my good friend Rusty Walrus, as you may know him on YouTube. He helped design the colors of that paint scheme. I know he's really excited to know that a 24 car nonetheless, that he helped design is in virtual victory lane. That's pretty crazy, so happy for him. And very cool for William Byron, now a 2-time winner in the Pro Invitational, back-to-back. Pretty cool. I talked about the race itself already. I do now want to spend a decent amount of time talking about the Fox broadcast. Every Pro Invitational race to date so far, the broadcast has probably been the best part of the entire show. I have been extremely impressed with Mike Joy, Jeff Gordon, Clint Boyer, everyone behind the scenes at Fox and iRacing. The way they put these broadcasts together has been incredible. And somehow today at Richmond, I think they outdid themselves. Today's broadcast was absolutely flawless in every sense of the word. I can't think of one thing that was wrong with today's show. Mike Joy was on his game as always. Jeff Gordon was on his game. They're both kind of funny too. The jokes were on point today. The cameras didn't quite catch every wreck live. Some of them even happened during commercial break, but they did have every single wreck captured on replay and were able to show the audience what happened. So it was pretty good in that sense. But the addition of Clint Boyer to the booth, Larry McReynolds as usual chiming in with his occasional commentary, are just a joy to listen to. Listening to Clint Boyer and Jeff Gordon sit up in the Fox booth and debate Matt DiBenedetto versus Ryan Preece on the racetrack was hilarious, because Boyer and Gordon have a history. They've gone back and forth, 8 years ago, whatever it was. So hearing them react in real time to this little controversy back and forth was incredible. The irony of Clint Boyer rage quitting in a sense 2 weeks after Bubba Wallace was involved with Boyer and he rage quit, more literally in a sense, but Clint Boyer after getting right, it was hilarious. Joey Logano was great when they cut to him. Kevin Harvick eating lunch, being stuck on pit road with 20 minutes of repairs, eating lunch, being called out by Mike Joy and Jeff Gordon, then figuring out that those are optional repairs, that he could actually go back out and race. I was dying. Mike Joy was being iRacing tech support for Kevin Harvick in real time. It was hilarious. It was great. That's what this series is supposed to be. That's why earlier this week in my episode, with all the little politicking and drama and who's allowed to be eligible, who isn't, that's why I think all that's just wasted breath. What it really comes down to is how much fun can we have with these broadcasts on Sunday. The racing obviously needs to be entertaining, and today's race I thought very much was, but the broadcast is arguably more important. How are the people presenting it? How entertaining are they? What are they able to do with these broadcasts that they're not able to do with a normal real-life NASCAR broadcast? And today's was just another perfect example. They hit it out of the park. Many of the drivers' personalities are shining through now better than ever. And I think this is great for NASCAR, especially once we do eventually get back to real racing, real cars on the track. I feel like fans are going to have a much closer relationship to a lot of these drivers than they ever did. I think fans who are watching the Pro Invitational series are growing closer and closer and more attached to certain drivers. I know I personally have. I've gained more respect for certain drivers throughout this entire iRacing endeavor. There's guys that have surprised me in ways. I've been watching some people's live streams and seen real personality come through that I'd never really seen before. And I think that's great. I look at a lot of these drivers a little bit differently than I did a month and a half ago. And in most cases, at least, it's in a positive way. I just want to make sure I give Fox a lot of credit here because a lot of people have been very hard on Fox the last couple of years with their real life Cup Series coverage. And fair enough. I think in real life, their NASCAR Cup Series broadcasts have kind of become a bit stale. NBC's been trying a lot of new things, and NBC's kind of the more new and innovative broadcaster over there. But as far as this iRacing stuff is concerned, Fox has absolutely nailed it, and they deserve all the credit in the world for it. And let's be honest, NBC's kind of slacking. I mean, they did that short track challenge a couple weeks back. The broadcasts were okay, but they weren't anywhere near what Fox is doing. Fox is putting a lot of effort into this, and their broadcasters, Mike Joy, I just can't say it enough. Mike Joy, Jeff Gordon, Clint Boyer have been outstanding. Larry McReynolds, outstanding. This whole thing was wildly entertaining. iRacing, Fox, NASCAR deserve a lot of credit for the way today's broadcast was handled. With that being said, let's put this race on the Groovy gauge. Let's talk a little bit more about the racing itself, the product we saw on the virtual racetrack today. Yeah, so after Bristol 2 weeks ago was a little bit hit or miss. The racing was kind of sloppy. There were a lot of wrecks. I was worried, with this also technically being a short track, that we would see just as messy of a race today. I was very pleasantly surprised, actually. We saw, like I said earlier, some green flag runs. We did have a late race caution, which set up a pretty dramatic final 2-lap dash to the finish. The most deserving guy in the field got the win, so I always think that's a good thing. Tire strategy, comers and goers, hilarious broadcasts, some good drama, tempers flaring in the virtual world. Really, my only negative in this race is that the actual Richmond Raceway track did not seem to change the way I feel like the real Richmond Raceway track does. I mean, the inside lane was easily the preferred line all day long. You could maybe run one lane up and make some time occasionally, but really it was a freight train around the bottom most of the day, which led to some good incidents, some bump and runs, some sliding around, some people rubbing up into each other, making each other angry. Led to some good tempers, but it was really very much a one groove racetrack, whereas the real Richmond, there's like 3 or 4 lanes you can pick from. It's kind of wild it's like an intermediate track when they get into the corners and fan out 3 wide. So not super realistic in that sense. It was very much like a Martinsville race, I think, in that way. But people like Martinsville. Martinsville's fun. That's not to say it wasn't a good race. It was just not quite what I'm used to seeing from Richmond Raceway. But still, very good race. Outstanding. Overall, in this Groovy gauge, I got to give this thing definitely better than Bristol last week. I gave Texas, I think, a 92, Homestead a 90. It's in that range. I do think this was, like I said at the very beginning, this was easily the most realistic race, and I do think the broadcast was probably the most entertaining it's been so far. They've been doing these Pro Invitational races. I'm going to give this thing a 95%. I think this was the best overall esports Pro Invitational thing they've done to date. For all the reasons I said earlier, the broadcast obviously carries a lot of weight as far as how entertaining this is. The way they present this is extremely important, and they nailed it today. The racing, I'll be honest, there were points in this race where I was kind of hoping for a caution. I was impressed. The drivers have clearly put in the work. Many of them have clearly improved and gained a lot of experience on the simulation, and it showed today. This looked like a very real NASCAR race with tempers, with a decent amount of passing, hard racing for sure. It was great. It was overall very, very good. At 95%, I was extremely entertained. If they can all look like this, I'm going to be a happy guy. In my opinion, this race did exactly what iRacing wanted it to do. It really made iRacing, the platform, look extremely legitimate, because that looked like a real NASCAR race. And a lot of people, when they see, oh, they're just racing on a video game, it's not anything like real life. If you watch this race today, even the largest skeptics will have to admit that it looked kind of realistic. I mean, obviously it's not. Obviously you don't get the same sensation racing on your desk in your home as you do behind the wheel of a 750 horsepower race car. But from a fan's perspective, looking at it from a distance, you can't deny it. That looked extremely realistic. And now at this point, you can't deny that there are at least some aspects of the virtual world, certain skills you learn racing on iRacing definitely do transfer into the real racing world, into the real world of racing a real race car. So I think this race did exactly what iRacing wanted to do when they tried to shorten up, shrink the field a little bit, when they got rid of resets. That's what iRacing wanted. They wanted to incentivize cleaner racing, smarter racing, racing that looks more like it does in real life, and mission accomplished. They got their wish. And I was a little worried it wouldn't be fun to watch, but it was very fun to watch. So credit to everyone involved once again today. Another success. I'll be interested to see what the ratings look like. I have a feeling the ratings will be a little bit lower just because we had that week off. People might have forgotten about it. I also have a feeling after Bristol was kind of sloppy, maybe a few people tuned out. A few people that were on the fence maybe tuned out for this one. Hopefully, maybe some of them watch this video. Maybe some of them see a lot of the highlights. Hopefully some of those people come back to watch next weekend at Talladega because this race was phenomenal. I thought this was a very fun race. It was hard for me to realize. It was hard for me to remember that it was a simulated race. It looked very real. The cars handled very real. Typical players up near the front. It was pretty great. It was fun to watch. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. I enjoyed this race, but I want to know what you guys think. That's all I've got for this episode. Pretty simple. Just giving you guys my reaction to the race. I'll be back later this week with more traditional episodes. Got something very excited planned later this week. I'll have more info on that probably tomorrow. So get excited. We're doing something very different on this channel. Something I'll be honest, I'm a little nervous. It's something I've never quite done before, but we're going to try and figure it all out together and make something awesome happen later this week. So stay tuned for that announcement. But thank you guys for watching. Subscribe if you're new. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Instagram. A big thank you to my Patreon supporters, of course. I could not do the show without the support I get from each and every single one of you over here on Patreon. Thank you all for continuing to support me and support the show, especially during these uncertain times. Your support really, really, really means a lot to me. So thank you all very much. And a big thank you to everyone who tuned in to the pre-race live stream I did earlier today with Jordan Anderson, Raja Karuth. We had a lot of fun doing it. Had a lot of fans in the chat, in the live chat, sending in questions and stuff that we were able to react to. I was able to just kind of bounce questions off of Jordan and Raja, hear their thoughts on today's race. It was a very fun show, and I'm glad a lot of you guys seem to enjoy it. We'll be doing it again next week before Talladega. But yeah, I will have more videos up in the meantime. I will see you all again very soon. Have a great rest of your weekend, everybody. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you very soon.